all. Today we have with us alumnus architect Sohan Saraf of 2007 batch as our fourth speaker of this webinar series. Good evening, Sohan, and welcome to the international webinar by alumni of MMCOA. 5 days, 5 alumni, and 5 international cities. In spite of busy schedules, varying time zones, and other logistical challenges, Sohan courteously accepted our invitation to become a part of this intercontinental webinar series. Thank you, Sohan, and welcome again. Sohan completed his graduation in 2007 from University of Pune and Masters in Digital Architecture, University of Technology, Sydney in 2010. Sohan has over 12 plus years of experience as a project management professional with extensive experience working with multinational organizations across Australia. His diverse experience assisted him to shape the workplace design of the future for multiple clients. His lateral thinking with commercial acumen helped him to navigate highly complex nature's projects to achieve desired outcome. He is passionate about creating a sustainable creative space for people to feel encouraged and energized at their workplace. Sohan strives for best practices resulting in quality outcomes for the client. His topic of the presentation is Future Work Environment. He will be talking about project management and future of architecture. Before we start the presentation, I request the audience to kindly put in question in the chat box, and also we would be sharing feedback form in the chat box. Kindly fill out in before the session ends. Over to you, Sohan, and request you to start with your presentation.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you everyone for attending. It's glad and thank you for this great opportunity. I'll try my best to share my experience and knowledge what I've learned over the year. Hopefully that will be very helpful to you, and please feel free to ask me any questions you have at the end of the presentation. Thank you. Let me just share my screen. All right. So my name is Sohan Saraf, and I'm going to talk about future workplace designs. So this is the agenda for today's my presentation. Just going to talk about myself, my experience, what the workplace is, what's workplace design, and what's the importance of collaborative workplaces, as well as future workplaces and future opportunities as a graduate architect. Just to provide a background, as Aarti ma'am mentioned, I graduated from MMCA as a Bachelor's of Architecture in 2007. I did 1 year of professional experience with a company called Construction Catalyzers, who's led by Mr. Dhananjay Dake. Then I pursued my master's in digital architecture for 2 years from University of Technology in Sydney, Australia. Since then, after graduating, doing my master's, started working as a junior project manager, and I'm currently working as a project director with one of the stock exchange listed company in Sydney, Australia. So I'll just walk you through with my experience with the first year after graduating from MMCA. Construction Catalyzer is a different architectural firm. So it's not standard buildings they design. They design envelopes. So you may have seen buildings for Infosys campus in Hinjawadi. So I was actually working as a lead designer with them, and I had a good opportunity to work on very high profile projects within India. The one which you can see is Bhopal Airport, which was built a couple of years ago. So I was one of them who was participated in designing this. So it was a very challenging project, as you can see from even renderings and the model which we did, it's a from both ways. It's a design surface which covers the envelope. So there's a definitely a different challenges when you start doing the design of multiple curves within the as an envelope purpose. So that was one of the example which you can see on my screen. It's the airport design for Bhopal Airport. Another one which is currently in construction is a Port Blair Airport. So if you can see, they both look like a shell, and that covers the entire of canopy, and that gives you a feel of having a shell structure, considering Andaman Nicobar or Port Blair is in middle of the ocean. So that was a concept behind developing this sort of surface to represent the local shell structure for the project. That's another airport design project which I did was at Gwalior Airport. Again, this was something which we designed, we submitted our entry, and it was then left to the jurors to then finalize the design. As you can see from this one as well, there is some multiple design elements which are very important in terms of shaping the form, thinking outside box, and taking a shape of a different as in for auditorium design. This is another project which we worked on, was a high-rise building where we had the entire floor plate without any column structure, especially just a core structure where we have lift cores and toilet core, whereas the entire boundary of a building was held by the triangulated portions cladded by the glazing. This was for one of the client in Mumbai. Another corporate design office where the entire building was suspended. So basically what you see in these renderings, you have 4 columns and these triangular braces. So the entire building is basically lifted up with all this structure on the side without having any of the column in between. So once I've pursued my master's in digital architecture, so this basically formed the base of choosing this course because I was more fond of designing a structure which are outside the box, and that's basically motivated me to go to pursue a design in masters in digital architecture. So as you can see from my first years in master, we were introduced with some different softwares which we can be provided with some multiple free flow concept designs. So instead of just restricting ourselves in the four walls, this is of a more of a structures which you can develop as in design. It basically can form a part of a shell rather than building itself. Another structure which you can see, even high-rise towers don't need to have just a square or rectangular or oval shape designs. You can come up with many multiple ways of designing a small high-rise tower, considering just the outside shell can form a part of a structure rather than just relying on the standard conventional floor plane or materials. So one of the project which I also did was using a sustainable house design. So as you can see, this is more of a using a high-rise structure where you have the bottom floors mainly with the lightweight concrete and structure to provide a main support for the entire block. You have a timber structure on the top, which is the eco-friendly material, and then going with the greenhouse frame structure with the polycarbonate wall panels. So having entire building being more sustainable, the zero carbon footprint. This is one of the other project which you may have come across. This is a public housing building for in Singapore. This was again based on the design background where you can use different shapes and different forms to create a different spaces within the same building or same zone. So as you can see from these images, there are a couple of buildings that looks like a stacking block, and the spaces within there looks like there are some communal spaces where the people from that apartment blocks can interact themselves and can use these spaces in between as a um, communal spaces for them to then mingle around. Since then, after doing my master's, I started working with a company who were doing commercial fit out. That's what we call commercial fit out, is basically the offices where you go to work. So this is where my experience, most of my experience lies. And I'm working as a project director in one of the company to design a new office fit out for some of the corporate clients. So as you can see, there's a multiple ways. This is not a traditional office space where you have some spaces where nowadays, especially after COVID, there's a lot of trend where you can work from home or work from anywhere in the office. So there is no dedicated space where if you want, you can come around and grab a desk and put your laptop and you can start working. Whereas there are some informal spaces where you don't have to sit down next to the table. You can just enjoy view at the time and you can keep working, or even you can take a break and refresh yourself and then keep going after going back to your desk. This is another workplace designs project which we delivered, similar to what the new finishes, where they go with more of an eco-friendly floor design, introduce more of a light and different color within the organization and fit out, which reflects the organization strategy, and then going off into introducing some plants to motivate and produce the more better outcome for the people who are working within. There's another project which I worked on, where you can see there are multiple office spaces where you have screen at the end, printers, some tea area and coffee area to be presented and can share between the staff. This is another project which this one is one of the best project which I worked on. This is for Facebook's office in Sydney. So this is probably was the start of in 2012. That's where people started moving onto agile work culture. So basically they are not providing a standard desk for anyone, whereas you can work anywhere from the office from anywhere. So Facebook, Microsoft, or name the big companies, that's where the trend started from. So they basically introduced the more of a collaborative spaces within. So this was probably the start of that culture, which you can see nowadays in new office fit out. If you see on this right hand bottom corner, where you have these interactive spaces with the atrium on sides, gives us more of an open feeling rather than having to block yourself in a 4 squares in a small cubicle and complete your work. These are some of the recent projects which we have completed. Telstra Office. So the Telstra is one of the um, mobile or internet provider in Australia. So this is where we started a small project for them, where this was the blank canvas. We received took a possession of this site, within consulted with the projects team, with the client, and then deliver the project to their expectation. And as you can see from what you see on the ground versus for the final product, there's a huge difference. A lot of work gets involved, especially in selecting materials which needs to be eco-friendly where possible, so that it can be sustainable and classified as from Green Building Council. So another project for Montessori. This is one of the childcare providers in Australia, where this is all just shows you how the initial project looks like. From there, how the construction starts, and then how the final product looks like. This is one of for the hydro group, more of a, this is a new trend coming up lately, where you have the exposed services in a ceiling, and that saves the cost, as well at the same time, if you paint it in white or black, that just hides within the workplace, and you can work around your entire facility to just hide the ceiling spaces and provide more of visual to the fit out itself. So just talking about work, what's the workplace? So workplace is place where the work is done. That's the simple definition. So how the workplace evolved from what in 1990s, how the workplace looked like, where you have a standard desk, where people are sitting to each other, and then it just keeps one after another, the rows of workstation, which goes endless. Since then, there's more development during the workplaces where you started going into a cubicle space where you can just concentrate yourself, get a job done, and then walk out at the end of the day. Then we're moving on to more of an openness kind of things. And then nowadays we are moving towards more of a collaborative approach rather than just sitting in an office and doing the works. So from workplace design, as I mentioned prior, the traditional workplace look like where you have a standard cubicles where you can sit best at the start of the day, you come in, you start working, and there's a very less interaction between yourself or person sitting on this side of a fence to the next side of a fence. And that was sort of a traditional workspaces which you could see in the offices. There are a few offices still like similar to that, but that's what probably we are changing the trend moving forward to change it to a newer fit out design where you can incorporate the collaborative workplace environment. So this is again a typical floor plan of a building office where you have a building core in the middle when all the other workplaces, traditional workplaces, they are scattered around. The drawback of this one is basically you will have lot of walls around the perimeter, and mainly the outside area is all glazing. So as soon as you start putting the walls around the perimeter, you block the natural light. And when it comes down to the people sitting in this area, if you're not getting natural light, that's gonna reduce your efficiency and getting the job done. So yeah, this was some of the more fit out designs where you could see from especially the person sitting on this side, because of the walls around, there's not really natural light coming into the workplace zone. This is something which bigger companies have thought of changing, and that's what's changing and which is being incorporated in the newer fit outs, as you can go and have a look. So this is again a typical office floor plan for a typical fit out where you have reception area at the start, you have open office floors, you have a couple of offices on the side for the managers, a small area for the cafeteria or something. We're having a kitchen facility here and some storage space on one corner. Again, being this facility just restricts, that sort of gives, if you can see on this side of a section where it just opens up to the outside world and can invite some more lighting within the floor space to provide some natural environment. This is what the new floor office open floor plan looks like. So basically, as you can see, there's more of a natural light. People like to see outside. They want to see what's happening outside, which gives them a sense of they're not just sitting in the office and doing work and getting job done. So as you can see, for more of an open plan workplaces where you can talk to each other, they're sitting next door, you can look out what's happening outside, you get a natural light coming in, and that's supported by the artificial lighting. This provides you a good place for your environment and provides you a better place for you to work and encouragement to go to office and do some work. So as a part of the open plan, as you can see from this photo, this is all open plan office. The only thing which is missing from here, people are standing outside here and they're talking to each other. And this is what Google or the big companies capture, that even though if you have open plan office, that doesn't mean that there's a more of a collaborative space. A person sitting on this floor or this end may not necessarily know someone on other side or next door. And that's what they wanted to improve in terms of more collaboration, bounce off ideas, and can help to do a quick problem solving sessions within the team or within your colleagues, or you can talk to someone else who's working on similar projects or whatever that may be. So this is where it was a birthplace for the collaborative workplaces. And that's what we're currently doing it in the more of a new office spaces, so that we can so they can have some more interaction within the team and within themselves. As you can see from these photos here, therefore there are more of a design of a collaborative workplaces. This does the exactly same job what the traditional office space does. In fact, this gives you a more understanding. You can work with your team, you can work even if you're sitting on one of the table, you can have a smart boards here, we can have just a whiteboard to bounce off ideas. A person walking past can just glance over, he may be able to assist or may be able to get some idea from that, whatever is happening in this. And this is where the future of office is heading towards, in a more of a collaborative workplaces, where instead of just sitting on the desk and doing your work, you probably start talking to your colleagues, working with someone who can assist you. And just like even you can see on boards, there are major big screens. You don't need to be sitting on your desk all the time. You can work from anywhere within the office, and that can assist you in developing more and more creative ideas. Uh, this is the extract which I received from Facebook. So basically, they did survey a couple of years ago, and this is what Facebook implemented, saying it's one of the best place to keep employees happy in an open office. So what they focused on is a mobility, giving every individual a flexibility, give them a laptop so they can work from anywhere rather than just restricting themselves to come to office every single day, and work from a particular desk. They also put a collaborative workplaces where you can talk to different people, different user groups to improve what it matters and can have a more efficient workplace. Also have multiple interactive spaces within there. They have just small offices or small kitchen spaces where you can just go for a coffee somewhere. You can bump into someone. You may be working on some different project. You may be working on different projects, but that's something which you can share your ideas around to give you then assistance. So if you're stuck somewhere with the design or anything, that's something can definitely help you in terms of moving forward. Second thing which they implemented was a flexible scheduling. I think having 9 to 5 job, they decided, not instead of enforcing that, you can work whenever you want. You can start at 5 o'clock in the morning, finish at 12 o'clock. If you are a late bloomer, you can start at 3 o'clock morning, finish at 10 o'clock. That gives you a flexibility. If you're working, if you have young family anywhere, it just helps you to then manage your day accordingly. And when you have that flexibility, you can dedicatedly work on the project or anything what you're working on with a full concentration, because that's something which you have chosen, not enforced on you. So that's for another one, which is implicated, which is flexible scheduling. Third one is basically empowering individuals. So they put some more quiet rooms in here. So rather than, if you don't really want to have collaborative space, you just want to sit down and do your work, you can just lock yourself in a small booths, get the job done, and walk away. Dedicated in the zone signage tags so that you know no one can disturb you if you're working on a particular thing. Then you just put a tag in so you can concentrate, and there will be no disturbance within. And the fourth one is collaborative work environment, where they put some small micro kitchens. We can run into team members where you can do a brainstorming session. Doesn't need to be on a desk. You can be anywhere in a campus. You can work from there. It's also helped in moving an idea forward and discuss any problems if they have, and can arrive to a solution within that. And so these are some of the campus photos from the Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon. So as you can see, there are a lot of collaborative environments where you can lock yourself or sit down yourself, get a job done. If you relax, you can do that. At the same time, you have office spaces where you can have your meetings, You have informal spaces, you can go outside, you can work from there, and just to improve your lifestyle, just add some slides where people can just slide down, just have relax their mind, and again resulting back into the improved mental health for the employee, which resulted in basically the more efficient workplace. So the main goal for the collaboration is to basically, when one or two people work together, they can share the ideas to accomplish a common goal. But this usually involves the brainstorming and share ideas, diving eventually in bringing people together and share purpose. So this is, you can see as a typical workplace floor, something which we are currently um, implementing in newer offices, where instead of having a traditional spaces, which you currently have some traditional spaces, at the same time there are more of a informal spaces. So you walk in, you have a space where you can meet someone if you want to. If you want to have a meeting, you have small spaces where you can discuss, do a brainstorming session with 10-15 people. You have some spaces we can have like 3 or 4 people can sit together and discuss an idea. If you want to just lock yourself, there are small booths where you can just dedicate yourself and get the job done. You have an outdoor space where you can go, you can have you have a cafe or anything, so you can enjoy the outside environment. Have some table tennis tables, anything, just to distract you from if you're a heavy work day, and then bring them back in, then concentrate back onto what they need to do best. As mentioned, the individual work area is basically desking. So the desking involves, you can have these desks reconfigured. Doesn't need to have space where every person is different. So maybe the collaborative environment may not be suitable for one. He may be more comfortable working on a space where he can dedicate himself in getting the work done. So that's a dedicated space for the workplace for a person who can just come into office, laptop, and get a work done. And as required, as you can see in the background, there's a collaborative space if required to get a job done. So that's basically the idea of individual work areas, where you have quiet space where you can just lock yourself in. You have less disturbance. You can have small pods where you can just lock yourself in, get a job done. If you have to attend a call, you can just walk into a telephone booth, can talk what do you need to do, and then you can go back to work and get work done. Similar things which are being implemented in some of the offices, where you can just sit down, get your laptop, concentrate yourself, and then finish what you are doing best. Moving to next one is the social at home spaces. So after COVID, basically it has been a challenge for people to bring them back into offices. So there are companies who are providing incentives to provide them a facility which they feel like they are sitting at home, rather than they feel like coming back to office. So it's more of a lounge spaces where you're used to sitting in front of the TV and getting work done. So these are some of the areas where inviting team members to come to office to make them feel like a homely environment, rather than having a traditional work desk where that may not be suitable for their work style, as due to recent culture of work from home. So this is some of the areas which are being implemented by some of the designers in the office spaces. More of a group collaboration spaces, which is I'm more of a focusing on this one because that's probably the moving forward. This is what most of them in a implementing, with more of large monitors. You have casual settings, you have built-in video conference facilities. So as you can see, it doesn't need to have a standard, just a small meeting room. It can be anything. It can be just a small ledge where you can just grab a coffee and talk to your colleagues. It may be a formal where you have a proper desk, and you can have a video conferencing with the people who you meant to meet with. You can just have a sit to stand or just a stand up meeting tables where you don't need to sit. Just we can talk to each other and share your ideas around. And this is more of a formal space where even if it looks like a formal, is providing some greenery spaces within, just gives that this ambience and improves the mental improves the mental health for the employees. So some of the, again, more of a collaborative workplace. And in recent times, what they have found is if you implement more of a greenery within the building or within your fit out, there's almost 73% chance of people, it improves their basically strength and provides you more feasible environment for them to think outside box, give them some more visual aspect to look towards, and breaks that autonomy of just having this rectangular or square surfaces. Again, that's what saying the more of a, it gives you enables some 73% more work productivity. So you can see everywhere, most of the places around here, they have implemented now the greenery within the building, within the fit out, just to give you that visual breakdown, making you feel not stuck in office. It gives you a understanding of your interacting with your nature outside. So based on that, so as you can see, this is something which is gonna cost you a lot. So if you are a person or a small firm or a single practice with 3 or 4 employees, or even a single practice, how can you afford this one? This is looks like for the major players where you have millions and millions of dollars to spend, and you can come to this environment. So lately, there are a few companies who have started a subscription model for the offices. So basically what they do is, you similar to what you do on Netflix or Uber or Airbnb, you pay a fee, a monthly fee. What that entitles you to, either you have flexible offices, so you can walk in any day, you can rent, you can book a desk, you can sit there. At the same time, they have multiple areas which you can take advantage of. For example, you have co-working spaces built in, you have meeting rooms there which you can rent for a day or a couple of hours if you are expecting a client. If you want to do a podcast, you can do podcast. They have provider services. So these are things which has been implemented and that has becoming very successful, especially with the smaller businesses or smaller practices where they really don't want to spend more money into developing office. Rather, they would go with a subscription model and provide them or their employees with a space which is equivalent to the multinational companies. So this is one of the company named Watso, and this is their office in Sydney, which you can see there are small office desk. If you want to come with your laptop and you can hire that desk for hour or daily basis. You have some collaborative spaces here as well, where if you're meeting with the client, if you're meeting with one of your colleagues, different friends, you can work together. If you're working on a project together, that's something which you can assist. A couple of open spaces where you can have your small brainstorming sessions. Of course, you have meeting rooms where you can, if you're arranging a presentation with the clients or anyone, that's something which definitely can assist with everything you're looking for. And a small, again, a creative use of a redundant container from which is salvaged into a small space for interactive workshop studio. This is another company which is WeWork, which gives you of a more of a open nature and feel of a bigger company, where again similar collaborative spaces they have implemented. If you want to rent a meeting room, you can have a meeting room here. And the good thing about this one is it is very professional office. So even if you're meeting with a client, they don't feel like they're walking into a small studio. You get an advantage of having a reception there. You have advantage of having a meeting room. You have advantage of having a collaborative space. If you want, you can elaborate on what you want. You can do a presentation with the client on a bigger screens. You can use, nowadays they're also trying to implement 3D modeling, so you can rent those facilities so you can present more better ways to your clients. Again, this is one of the more WeWork facility around Australia, where they have a small area. It's like a facility where it's a training room. So if you are having any workshops, anyone with any of your team members, you can rent this space. So this basically provides you an alternative to a small office space, which gives you accessible collaborative space as well as a small space environment, and you can avail all the facilities in terms of your kitchen facilities, your collaborative spaces, individual office spaces, training room, meeting rooms, whatever you feel like, on a subscription-based model, which are becoming more and more successful nowadays. What does future workplace looks like? So future workplace, again, that comes back to the collaboration, more involvement of technology. So rather than just having a small room sitting in the office, you'll have more of looking at the smart boards. You will have a lot of screens in the office. You'll have different spaces where people can share the spaces with the people on a different side of the world, depending upon where you're sitting. So this is probably the more of I would say the current environment we're going for, and in future it's going to be very common space. Rather than just having to sit down on a desk, you are more of a laptop based environment where you can just go off and work from anywhere. Secondly, you will be integrating more of a technology. As you can see here, a lot of VRs. um, I'm working with a couple of architects within Sydney. They have already started in implementing the VR technology. So they are developing a model in Revit or ArchiCAD, and then the way they build the model, you can basically get your client to put a VR on, and they can do a walkthrough with them in a space. It just gives you that third dimension, and you don't need to just present standard three-dimensional figures. More of a, again, more of a technology where you have multiple screens, where you have data displayed, or you have people you're working with. They are in different time zones, different places. You can all work together in a workplace at the same time to be more of a collaborative space. Again, just provides you a screen where you can take advantage of a bigger screens into your space. We're implementing of more of a and more of a technology within the construction industry. As you can see from here, a lot of people are using VRs. So, and this is what people are doing. Rather than going into, people use a VR, they can do a walk around in the spaces. Even in the table, you can see, if you're looking at the master planning level, you can see how things are working and how that's going to be implemented in future. If you're looking at smaller spaces, again, the VR gives you that the third dimension where you can present your model or anything to a client without going into that. And that just gives you a feasibility and flexibility of presenting that with the client, and gives you that more advantage where you can present this to them in a real-time mode. So you can make the changes at the same time as client is doing the walkthrough within the model, within the space. A minimalistic environment where, rather than just cluttering all your workstations, the simple workstations with a clean floor to ceiling height glass, with a standard small desk, providing more of a futuristic look where very minimal spaces, providing them more concentration of workforce, or the screens, again, installation of holograms, which is probably going to be In future, you have rooms where people are sitting on the other side of the world and they're doing their presentation with the team in different state, different time zone, different country. Um, and more of a designing for well-being, giving a more comfort to the stuff where you have desks which are sit to stand. If you're a person who wants to like to sit and do the work, if you want to sit and stand and get a job done. Again, small spaces where you can concentrate yourself. You can have small pods where you can collaborate. If you want to relax, you can relax. You mentioned before, there are a couple of companies implementing a small slides, just breaks that if you are doing some high pressure jobs, just gives you that small break from your daily activity and freshens up your mind. Some of the companies have also included dedicated areas where you can do stretches, do yoga, take a break from your work, come back, relax, and go back to work and get it more efficient. And again, implementation of greenery as well as more of a natural light coming into spaces that just gives the workplace or employees uh, more of a structure where they can look outside, gives you that section of openness feeling and presents you with that unique opportunity. Again, last one is embracing the nature. Can see a small pots with the plants on the outside, and wherever you can see a greenery that just gives you that um, feeling of that you are connected to nature and not just sitting in the office. Gives you breaks the monotone of the office and gives you more of a peaceful look when you look towards the green spaces within the office area. Future as a graduate architect. So there are multiple ways you can be successful. Doesn't mean that the way someone have chosen a path that's successful means you'll be successful. A lot of things. If you are into a design, then you can go into multiple streams, like can have architect, interior designers, lighting consultant, urban design, landscape architecture, fashion, graphic design, industrial design, automotive design. So it's not just being architect. That means you just need to focus your energy towards that. Probably try to find what you need best. I myself started as an architect and then moved as a projects person, where I started as a project contracts manager. You can be a project manager, which takes you to the project director level. You will do water management. You got material development, especially with the sustainability. There's a very vast uh, challenge with the material development. People are looking for innovative materials where they can have more lasting, more user-friendly, more sustainable material, which can be implemented in the construction industry. You can go into planning, scheduling, you can have as a surveying, you can be a quality assurance officer. If you're going into sustainability, you can go to sustainable building design. You can be acoustic designer. You can be a product designer. You can be a green building and construction professional. And mostly all the Western world currently is very focusing on a sustainability area, where you are facing more of they're giving you a green star certificate, where you are using reusing the furniture, you're reusing areas which are going to have a carbon zero footprint for the building. So there's a vast majority, a vast scope to establish yourself in a sustainability, and that's will probably lead back into projects and design as a sustainable consultant. um, I currently work with a company, and I did my master's, just to give you background and for a future opportunities which you may have. I did 2 years master's in Sydney, Australia, and then started working as a projects person. Currently, there's a very vast market in Australia where I'm looking to hire a few people, and there is a lot of shortage of good talent in Australia, and a lot of companies, people I work with, and that's the same sentiment they have been following. So if you guys are even thinking of considering Australia as a place where you want to pursue your masters and looking for a future opportunity as a graduate student, definitely this is the best place I think you can be on earth, where you will probably, as soon as you land in a couple of days time, you can probably walk away with having a full-time job in your hand while you're pursuing your masters. So if you even have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help where possible. Thank you everyone for listening patiently, and please feel free to shoot any questions if you may have.
Yeah, thank you, Sohan. Audience, we would like to have some questions from you. Sachin sir, can you?
Yes, Sohan, what a journey. I mean, right, starting working on the airports and all the way up to the interiors and getting into the smallest nitty-gritty of the details.
Yes,
Uh, just a question out of curiosity.
sure.
Was the journey of working on such large-scale projects all the way up to the interiors? Was it like a predetermined decisions, or it just happened to, get into
So,
changes?
firstly, even for when I finished my master's, bachelor's in India, it didn't really. I wanted to go to UK, especially to pursue my master's, but I think my experience with construction catalyzer or working with on such a large environment scope that basically direct, directed me to pursue a digital architectural field, and that was the only course available in Australia at that stage. So hence the reason pursued my masters, and then basically uh, that just took my shape. So when I started off my work after finishing my master's, what I realized that there's a lot of gap between what happens in the office, especially with architects, and what happens on site. So that's something where I started following my passion, where I started to more of a managing a project type of things rather than just managing the design. So that's where I started moving away from architecture and becoming more of a projects person.
I think that's a very important statement that you made, is that, from design to site. So I think it's very
There's a
important
huge
for
gap.
students as well to know that, along with the design that you work like to do in college, it's always
Yeah,
better to, connect yourself with the site and site proceedings, because it's
yeah. And
like
in real environment, there's a budget you're working towards. So what do you design like, and that's very heart crushing. As soon as you design something and the client comes back, I have only $5, and you have designed something which is going to cost you 5,000,
correct.
and you're revisiting your design to make it fit within that $5 is a challenge. So
Yes.
sometimes you have to just keep your design aside, just concentrate, get started, and get a job done. So I think that's very, and don't get bogged down, especially even if you face this one, you will find a way through to then implement your ideas in future.
Thank you. We have first question from one of our students. His name is Prithvi. As a student, how does your college workload and work ethic reflect on your current professional workload and work ethics? Like probably
Um,
know the difference between that, your work
yes.
and during the college days and in the program.
So basically, when you're working in a professional environment, the timelines you have to plan very planning is very crucial in any shape. So even as a project manager, you are setting your own milestones, and sometimes those milestones are not met, but that's where you need to evolve every single time. Even in when doing bachelor's or master's, again, you have assignments, you're working towards assignments. So consider those as goals for or milestones for a project. You are working as a final delivery aspect, and then you are working backwards from there. What do I do now?
Mhm. Your Sohan, your sound, we are not able to hear you, Sohan.
In reality, its timelines are very crucial. If you miss your timeline, that's not going to go down good with anyone, right? Not even client. If you're working with anyone else, those are very important. So I guess those assignments, so assignments you get, that's something which it's, I think if you take those seriously, that's something which you can definitely help with um, going out and then having a good work ethic in your professional life.
We have one comment from architect EB. Amazing work, super creative and very strong command on spaces, materials and quality.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We have next question from Asmita Patwardhan. Architecture provides a shell that aims to shape the social environment within its confines. Highly demanding work, highly demanding work culture, on the other hand, keeps the worker continuously under surveillance with complete lack of privacy. These two aspects are two extremes. What are your thoughts? Do open office environments really reduce toxicity of work culture?
Um, I think so. It's just basically uh, what if there has been a lot of studies done, especially with open work culture, and when this COVID hit, there are a lot of companies which basically start start thought of going backwards to those spaces because they were implementing 1.5 meter distance on those rules. So that was a very different viewpoint from some of the companies where they didn't want it to go to a more of open office name culture. But just the openness of office itself, just imagine yourself going into office where you have three walls and you lock yourself and all the partitions are head high. So that probably may help in such a way, but to definitely flush out the toxic culture, I think it definitely boosts that, because there is no place to hide. There's no place like you can be a keyboard warrior sitting behind the works desk and start sending emails, but it's just once you're sitting face to face with someone, it just improves and helps with solving any issues, or if you have any things with each other, that's definitely helps with removing that toxic health culture. Definitely, I agree.
I think today's time it's a really kind of hot discussion as to privacy versus with like your social life, or your as you correctly said, it's a collaborative environment. And I mean,
And it's very useful. I have personally have worked in a collaborative environment, and there is a lot of good than bad, I would say, with that. So it's definitely a good thing, which is, and again, this is what is in last 4 or 5 years, things may come up very differently, especially working where you now more and more people are reliable on the technology, or like Teams or Zoom. That's where you're going to have more of a different spaces. People are working from different environment and how you collaborate between themselves. So that's the key.
I think in between you mentioned about the design thoughts are changing after this pandemic,
Oh,
the COVID
yes.
situation. So, do you find any particular difference that can actually affect the design of workplaces, like in the long run? Maybe we can say that last 2 or 3 years were very tough, but things are slowly coming back to normalcy. But do you see a permanent change in the kind of work
There's
space?
definitely a permanent change because I knew few of the companies here, they used to allow employees to work from home one day a week, and that was a big ask. It's now taken granted that you will only probably come to office one day a week. So the tables have turned. So and as mentioned before, companies are pushing, they are struggling to get people in the office. Like they are providing them incentive nowadays to come to office to work, so rather than going from, because if you're traveling say 1 hour each way for 5 days, that's almost your 10 hours are gone, and that's just the work, that's just a travel time. If you consider everything else, it's just sometimes it's not physical, and you can probably get more work done while if you're working from home than to going to office. And there are, again, there are some positives and negatives, but that's where you need to find that right balance. Like if you can work from home, you can get a job done, but then you lose on the collaboration with your colleagues or things where you can share your ideas, because again, you are going to lock yourself in your office or home, you'll just get a job done and then you'll walk away. Whereas if you go to office, you can start chatting with people, you get more ideas, you can start developing those. So I think there is a fine line between, and that's something which everyone has to decide, and no one can force it. If you want to work from home, you can do it, but at the same time, you need that collaboration, you need that human interaction, working within the team.
Yeah, I think absolutely correct. Nowadays it is even said that more of talks and thought sharing, information sharing happens on a cup of tea rather than sitting in the conference room.
And yeah, we are used to it. So it's like you go to downstairs, have some chai in the morning or in the afternoon. That's where you share most of the ideas.
Yes. We have next question from Abhay Bhosle, who's our
Yep.
senior from Ingrain. There are massive projects coming up in Indian metros. Do you feel it's feasible to work on them in collaboration with local architects?
In terms of Australian architects or in like local architects, mean Indian architects, you reckon?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Yes, I think there is a good chance. Like there are a few companies which architecture firms which I know. Basically, you may have seen the 2008 Olympics in China, Beijing. So a lot of those were designed by Austrian architects. So there is a huge opportunity where, especially where the infrastructure, and that was a boom for China at that stage. A lot of Australian companies were competing to win that projects, and that's where the form of this digital architecture, where more of you can see that the Bird's Nest Stadium, which they built or they did a water cube for their swimming championship, that's where they got involved. So I think there's a huge scope for that to be implemented in India, and definitely if there's an opportunity, that's I think we definitely need to grab that with both hands.
We have next question from Gauri Pundale. Uh, yeah. Actually,
And can I just elaborate more on Abhay's question? I
yes.
think he had just mentioned this. There are like cost lines are attractive. That's definitely like I can see that change in IT. There's a big time. There's a big gap, and I think in India we need to capitalize on that, and also day-night gap. So I think we are 5.5 hours ahead. So like that depends on the time or zoning, but even for a half hour, that gives you a time to that or do that overlapping session, whereas you can keep going with the work. So there's definitely a good chance for that. And if you need any assistance, please let me know. And I know a few people around in Sydney, which they may be really interested in collaboration for future projects.
I think it's one question from Gauri Pundale. This is more to do
Yep.
with architecture. Can you please elaborate on the current scenario about sustainability and architecture in Australia?
Yeah, so I have done a couple of projects for Green Star. So what they have done is they have formed a Green Building Council of Australia. So what they do is they assess the buildings or fit out to a certain criteria. So that means there's a percentage of spaces. So for example, just to give you example, when you do a joinery means any of the say workstations, anything, all the materials which comes from um, the wood, it needs to backtrack, and that needs to be a sustainable source. So someone should have planted that tree must have cut, someone should have replanted that tree. So they have a chain of command, and they basically give you a certificate that this is sustainably sourced, and in the place of that particular wood, they have replanted another tree which is of a certain height. So this is one of the initiative, and there are a lot of other things which they have implemented. The only thing problem is a cost. Not everyone can afford to have that sort of budget to deliver a sustainable projects. But like they have currently set up a guidelines where you can get a 4-star rating, 5-star, or a 6-star rating, being a sustainable building and which can produce less carbon footprint. So how they have achieved is one of the company, they have sponsored a solar farm somewhere in a regional town of Australia. So they have built it. So they basically feeding that electricity to say 10,000 houses. So that 10,000 houses, they're offsetting the amount of electricity they use. They're outsetting against the people they have. Uh, they're buying the electricity from. So that's what they're doing. And especially in Australia, if you go to middle of Australia, there is nothing there. So there's a big shift nowadays to build more and more solar farms to provide that more of a sustainable green energy than to just use burnt coal.
Thank you, sir. I think in between you mentioned about larger scope for students after architecture working in Australia or even going for further studies. Can you elaborate a little more on that so that our students can get directly
Yeah,
benefit?
sure. So basically, there are few um, universities in Australia, in Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne, Brisbane, uh, and they provide courses from urban planning design, masters in project management, masters in architecture, and multiple other disciplines. So there is, and most of the firms in Australia are, they're on eastern side, which is Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne. And I think previously, if you come on student visa, you had you could work probably, I think, 20 hours a week. Due to the recent pandemic, they have allowed them to work 40 hours a week. So basically, that's equivalent to a full-time role. So you can work 8 hours, 5 days. That's 40 hours. So, and the way this is structured is most of the office or most of the classes for the masters are outside working hours. So you can basically start office 7 o'clock in the morning, finish at 3 o'clock, and you can attend a 5 o'clock session in the class. So that gives you that chance to where you can study as well as gain the professional experience in Australia, and which is very, very important, especially the construction industry is very different. Hopefully, does that help? And you can give my email address or phone. I'm happy to help. As I mentioned, I know many people, some of my friends and suppliers, or you can say architects, they are all looking to hire more. And you can probably look for, if you're interested, I can even see if I can talk to someone. There are a few scholarship programs which are sponsored by the firms, not just by the university. So that's something which you can take advantage of, where you can work with the company, you can be sponsored, and then you can get a local experience.
Yes, I think surely it will help our students. I have one last comment and maybe
Sure.
kind of question that I think probably one third of our day, or probably we can say one third of our working life is spent in office. On
That's right.
average. Then
8 hours.
yeah, that was a day. So over the period, it's very very important that when the many of these companies who actually identified this as an issue and start addressing in different ways and how to keep employees happy. I think in between you mentioned about it as well. So
Yep.
this 73% actually, I have really, what are the studies that actually go behind this, what creative work?
So basically what they're saying is a mental health plays big role in workplace. So as a traditional workplace, I mentioned, it's just you have set hours, you have set desk. As you can play previous generation, you will have, they will wake up at some points, at certain point, you go to office, come back home, and they have an entire workplace. They will spend 8 hours a day in that one chair for entire of 30-40 years. So that's something which is changing. Nowadays, there is more focus on your mental well-being. If you are happy at your workplace, your productivity increases. If Monday comes and you think, I really don't want to go to office, that means you are not in the right place. And that's something which companies wants to move away. So they're implementing things like end of trip facility. So instead of just driving or anything, you can just catch public transport or anything. You come to office, or you can ride your bicycle to the office. You have showers, you have change rooms. So it just basically gives you that more added bonus. You have small recreational areas. Like you could even see the Infosys campus or anyone, they have got a badminton courts inside. They have got table tennis courts inside, because that's just, even if you're working eight hours, you're really focusing on the project or on your screen for 4 hours,
Yeah.
even if you work hour is 8 hours day. So even that 8 hours, you need your 100% potential, and that's what companies are trying. There's also few things which are currently happening now, especially in UK and Scandinavian countries, where they're implementing 4 days work day,
Mm.
4 days week. So what they think is you can probably spend a couple of hours more for 4 days, and then you can have 3 days off. Again, that comes back to your mental well-being. You get a more time to spend with your family and get a job done. And especially working from home, I think I'm working more than 8 hours every day anyways. So I think that's good initiative. I'm not sure what's that gonna do, and I'm not sure how that is gonna implement the workplace design, but it's just good. There may be a session where few people may work on this, say, and that can be a collaborative where people can work 3 days from office, and then other people can work another 3 days from office. So your office footprint gets shrinked, and you can have that collaboration. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen, but that's something which is it's very interesting.
We have next question from Nachiket. Could you share some experiences of yours as a project manager?
Yep. Yes. So, firstly, when I started my professional experience, I worked in a very small company. So, basically, I was doing designing, I was doing estimating, budgeting, managing, talking to subcontractors and everything. So, I think that gave me a good foundation on good foundation on how the entire project life cycle works. And once you get understanding of that, you can see the challenges faced by a project manager, and you start appreciating that. So if you can, if you know the entire project cycle, because usually the architects or designers, they come to very front end. At the end of the project, that's not mainly their involvement. That's where your project manager or contractors start doing, and you're working with a multiple vendors or multiple team, your communication skill improves a lot. You need to be a good communicator to make sure understand what's happening, and at the same time you need to be a problem solver, because you are basically a stop and go sign. You will have people just throwing questions and issues with you. You just need to assess which are issues are important, which you need to address, and then go with your the entire project. I think that's something which is, if you like, and if you like that word, is definitely, I would definitely suggest you to be a project manager.
Is there, do you find any difference? Did you the way that projects are managed in India? I mean, the general practices and working in a country like Australia. Do you find any difference between the two countries in terms of way that
It's
projects are?
it's it's more in Australia, especially, is where very contractual. So everything comes back to your contract. So you need to know your contract condition very thoroughly. So you need to understand what the implications are, what are the liquidated damages, what you can force, what you can't force, and that sort of thing. So I think that's very, and again, when you're working with a bigger organization, that's where it gets very tricky. In India, of course, if you're working with L&T or bigger companies, of course, there are contractual implications. I'm not really sure when it comes down to a small level, but in Australia, you have, even if you're working on a $50,000 contract, which is equivalent to probably 5 lakh, you still have a contract in place. So it's just need to make sure that you read that fine print, you understand what implications are, and you allow for those implications or consider those.
Yeah. In continuation to Nachiket's first question, this
Yep.
is more to do with the ergonomics. In pertaining to desk job, I'm really concerned with ergonomics of computer desks, because it really makes us human creepy, and at the end of the day, we get a hunched back. Could you?
And that's where, yeah, that's where you could see they have started implementing sit to stand desks.
Mhm.
So where you have that flexibility of, you can, if you, and that's very common issue. So if you're sitting on your chair for 8 hours, you are going to have back problems, and it's a proven. So that's where you have started implementing. When you want, you can just raise your desk, you can stand, and you can work from there. So that's definitely is like, it's definitely being considered. Again, comes back to your mental health. So if you're happy at work, if you will give you 100%, if you're not happy, you're not giving you 100%.
I think the variable workplaces also makes a lot of difference, rather than just sitting on
Yes,
work long
sitting on
hours.
a desk, and you may be comfortable, but that's where, like, if you're sitting on a sofa at your lounge for 3 hours, you're gonna have back issues.
Yeah. One more comment from my side. Uh,
Yes.
Normally, when we stay in a house, we have certain sense of belonging. Same happens because we spend many of our long hours in office. There also, over the period, we kind of develop that belonging. So, in the renting a workspace, do you think that I mean, does this aspect really play a major role? Because many times people spend almost 30, 40 years of their life in these kind of spaces. So renting, will it really change the way that we look at the workplace?
I think it's more of a, it's more suitable for smaller teams or smaller firms, where you can avail a facility of the bigger firms. Like, you're not going to go and buy a projector to have one presentation with the client. Whereas if you have flexibility, if you could spend that 1 hour with the client with the professional services, and you can rent out. So for example, if you need to do a 3D model, you're not going to buy a machine. So if you have that access to that in that environment, you may as well rent a space. And even if you do a day pass or whatever it is, you have choices of different workplaces. You can be a collaborator, you can have your teammates, or you can work with some other architects on the same places. So for example, I've showed some of the videos where you have VR goggles on. That's something you may not be able to achieve as a small practice as you go. But if you rent a place, you will have that you can have access to that. So I think from that perspective it's more viable, and not from like sense of belonging there, like this is something which I'm going to go day in and out. So that's is something like a hotel where you'll just go in, use the facility, do a nice swimming and come back. That's something I think it's more of that sort of culture, and it's very, very, very popular. It's like even the multinational companies what doing. I'm just gonna give you example. For a person to set up, like for one person to set up in office in Sydney city, it costs $25,000 per year. So if you can rent a space for $5,000, would you spend 25, or would you rent $5,000, which can be used by someone else? So that's where it comes down to dollar figure. That as soon as you mention that, the business case starts to make shape. Like, am I going to spend 25? Or am I going to spend 5,000?
And we have one comment from Ashleisha Kade. Congratulations, Sohan. All the best for even more better work for future.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I will take up a last question from Nachiket again.
Sure.
What are the most important skills for design development coordinator?
Firstly, again, mentioned to you, you need to know the project life cycle. That's very, very, very important, because at the end, as a design development, you'll be very upfront involvement. As you go further and further, there will be less involvement from a design perspective. So if you know the entire life cycle of a project, that you will start appreciating, and you start thinking from that perspective, and you can start basically predicting what responses you're going to get from the project manager or from the client. Then you can basically break those responses and can act on their behalf.
Well, Sohan, that was wonderful, the question answer session. I have a last question for you. What advice as an alumni would you like to give to our students?
I would say just believe in yourself. Sometimes you think you're going to do that thing, but the life throws you somewhere else. So just any opportunity is good opportunity, grab it with both hands and just run with it. So rather than just pressing forward with, I want to do this, I'm not getting that opportunity, the fate may have something else written. So don't overthink, just keep going and enjoy life.
Yes, thank you, Sohan.
Thank you.
Thanks. It was a very
Colin,
practice.
thanks a lot for your.
Thank you, Sohan, for a wonderful presentation that you gave. It was simple yet extraordinarily profound and effective. It was absolutely incredible how you tailored your message for the audience and captivated them from the beginning of your presentation to the end, with the question answers were well answered. And I'm sure the students are definitely going to be benefited by the inputs given by you. Thank you
Yes,
again, and a standing invitation to visit MMCO whenever
Yes.
you are here in Pune. Do visit us.
Definitely, man.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you again.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much.
Bye-bye.